Today's Mercedes-Benz interview of the day brought to you by Mercedes-Benz EV, the boundlessly capable all-electric EQS SUV from Mercedes-Benz. Vehicle all-electric, the feeling all Mercedes. Learn more at mbusa.com/EQS-SUV. Here's a question that has come up, usually comes up at this time of the year. Every year at this time, we ask, well, wait a minute. You have 16 seeds. They're playing Tuesday night, Wednesday. Why don't you have 16s play against 16s as opposed to 16s playing against an 11 seed or a 10 seed? Here's Marvin with the answer.
All right, so the NCAA selects the lowest four ranked at-large programs to play for a 10 seed, and the four lowest ranked automatic qualifiers to play for two 16 seed spots.
Okay. That clears that up. Yes, Paul?
I always wonder because you think there's a bunch of 16s playing the next 2 days. You'd think there'd be a bunch of 15s playing. The lowest ranked teams in the tournament would be the play-in games. So that means if you are the lowest ranked at-large bid, you automatically get the 10th seed, Marvin?
That is correct. If you barely get in, you have to play in the play-in games.
Huh.
Let's bring in Seth Davis, CBS Sports, college basketball studio analyst, reporter, author, all-around good guy. Joins us on the program. All right, Seth, we were just talking about that, the first four in. Did they ever think about having 16s play against one another?
Yeah, well, of course, you have two games with the 16s against each other and two with the at-larges. Let me just say one small correction. There's no predetermined designation for what seed number you are. This is actually very unusual. It's almost always 4 11 seeds.
Okay.
We actually were talking about this in the studio going into the selection show because I saw some of the mock brackets had like the last four in as 10 seeds. And the reason is we had 5. We actually thought it was going to be 4 bid thieves, right? These are teams like a Duquesne. So Dayton was going to be in regardless. So if Dayton won the Atlantic 10 is a 1-bid league because Duquesne won the Atlantic 10. Now there's 2 teams from the A10 and Duquesne would not have been an at-large. So Duquesne is a bid thief. Last year, there was 1 bid thief. Year before, there were 2, which forces the committee to scramble. This year, there were 5. That never happens. So there's 2 implications for that. First of all, although the first 5 teams that were out, the first teams out, St. John's and Seton Hall and all these teams, Pittsburgh complaining about not getting in, they would have been in, but for these bid thieves. And then the other thing is, Duquesne may win the Atlantic 10, but that doesn't mean they're going in as a 7 seed. They're going to be seeded according to their overall body of work, which was where it ended up on I believe, the 11 line. So that bumped up the last 4 into 10 seeds. So I'm a bracket nerd, but basically, there's this conversation because, Dan, this tournament's going to expand. Whether we like it or not, it's going to expand. They're going to add games to Tuesday and Wednesday. My guess is this could be the last tournament at this size. If it doesn't happen next year, it's going to happen soon. So they're probably going to add 8 teams, and they're just going to add games to Tuesday and Wednesday. That's it. They're not going to 96. And so there's this conversation of, well, do you put in, that should go to the power conference last at-large teams because we want, the mid-majors to be able to get in. The problem is, that means that all those power conference teams that come from big markets, big brands that fans actually want to watch, everyone wants to watch everything, they're out of the tournament before Thursday starts. So this was the compromise at having 2 games with the 16s and 2 games with the at-larges. And let me just add one more thing. Every time a team plays in the NCAA tournament, it gets a unit. It's like a unit for its league. It's like $1 million. And it's paid out over, I think, 6 years through the conference. So if you're in the first 4 and you win, that means you get 2 units. So these 16 seeds for them, that's a nice little chunk of change that the winner's going to get.
Give me the team that has the best gripe not getting in.
Oh, I think none of them, man. Honestly, I don't want to hear it, Dan. I don't want to hear it. It's like, win the games and don't be on the bubble. And I think it's really disrespectful. Look, I can quibble. I had Seton Hall and Oklahoma in, okay? And I had I had Virginia out and I had one other team out. I think I actually got my numbers wrong, but Seton Hall and Oklahoma were my first 2 out, okay? But the thing is, like, if you're going to be a coach and you're saying, oh, that's BS and the analytics are BS and the net, like, call up Tony Bennett and tell him his team doesn't deserve to be in. Call up Nico Medved at Colorado State and say their team does. If the Mountain West is complaining, our seeds got screwed. And by the way, New Mexico, we weren't talking about New Mexico as a bid thief, but we now know if New Mexico hadn't won the Mountain West Conference tournament championship game, it would not have gotten in, and the Mountain West teams got seated a lot lower than we expected, and they think that they got screwed. And by the way, nobody wants to expand. It's almost like people like to complain, Dan. I don't know. Maybe it's you're on the radio. You wouldn't know about that. So,
but expansion takes away from the complaints.
no, it doesn't, because whoever the first teams that are left out are going to complain.
You think if we get to 76?
Oh, of course. Of course. You think number 77 is not going to complain? You think number 78 is not going to complain? You think their fans aren't going to, the commissioners and whoever? I mean, we're just moving a goalpost.
Yeah.
Same thing's going to happen in football when whatever number they settle on, whoever doesn't get in. Was Florida State happy? Right. So this is the nature of the beast. We like to complain. And fortunately, beginning tonight, we have games to talk about.
Players that we should learn about, or we will be learning about. Give me 3 or 4.
Okay, so I'll sort of at the mid-major level. Tucker DeVries at Drake reminds me a lot of Doug McDermott. He's a 6'7" inside-out guy, great three-point shooter. He's an absolute bucket, 6th in the country at scoring, and like Doug McDermott, plays for his dad. You know that I like narratives. Grant Cannon is another one of my sleeper guys. Tyon Grant Foster, if they get through, is their leading scorer. They're coached by Bryce Drew. We all remember from the great shot that he hit. They won the regular season in the WAC. They won the tournament, third tournament in 4 years. So that's a good thing to go with. But 2 years ago, Tyon Grant Foster was playing for DePaul, collapsed in the locker room during a game with a major heart issue. Thought that his career is done. And now he's one of the best players. And I'll just looking down at my bracket. I'll tell you somebody to watch out for if it happens. I talked about this on the selection show. Is Caleb Love. Caleb Love is the guard who was the hero of North Carolina's run to the Final Four. People forget that North Carolina actually did not have a very good season. They were kind of on the bubble until about mid-February. They got hot, and everything Caleb Love threw up went in. Took them all the way to the Final Four. Last year, they had a disaster. He was definitely part of the problem. He wasn't the only part of the problem, but he was part of the problem. Transferred to Arizona, and now they're the 1 and 2 seeds in the West. So in my perfect world, where I like compelling narratives, Arizona and North Carolina will play to go to a Final Four in what will forever be known as the Caleb Love game.
We're talking to Seth Davis.
That's cruel. That'd be kind of cruel to the kid to be in that situation.
Yes. CBS Sports College basketball studio analyst and reporter. Give me the number 1 seed that you don't think will get to the Final Four.
Well, North Carolina is the 4th number 1 seed. So if you're looking at that, UConn, Houston, and Purdue all season long, the nerds who cover the sport, we call them the big 3 because they really separated themselves from the field. And then it was kind of a revolving door as to who was for. Who could be dangerous in that West region is Baylor. Not like a great defensive team like he's had in the past, but they can really score the ball. Another name to watch out for, Jacoby Walters, a freshman. He'll be an NBA lottery pick. And I have to say, I only get like 4 minutes to fill out my bracket before the start of the show. And why not? Because the more you think about it, the worse you do.
True.
But I have to say, look, it's hard to get to a Final Four, but for Purdue, they could potentially, there's 2 teams in that region in Creighton and Tennessee that are the embodiment of the teams that would give Purdue a problem. Creighton, to me, has a real good chance to go to a Final Four. A couple of things could bother Purdue. First of all, good perimeter scorers. They're not a great perimeter defensive team, although they're a little bit better. Obviously, you need somebody big inside to bother Edey. And, Zach Edey absolutely lives at the foul line. This has been one of those annoying conversations as well. So Creighton has a 7'1" center named Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's one of the best defensive centers in the country. And he's also a good scorer. He can draw Edey away from the basket. And Creighton is also ranked number 1 in the country on KenPom on defensive free throw rate. So they commit the fewest fouls per possession of any team in the country. If Purdue plays Creighton, But Tennessee has a dynamic scorer in Dalton Connect. He's a transfer from Northern Colorado, big time scorer, one of the real surprises, and they're still an elite defensive team. So if Purdue plays either one of those teams, look, it's hard to get to a Final Four, but those are two teams that are well constructed to beat Purdue.
We're seeing college football coaches frustration with NIL, transfer portal. How has it affected college basketball? I know Jay Wright bowed out at Villanova after a great career. I don't know if transfer portal and NIL was affecting that decision. And what kind of money is available in college basketball when it comes to collectives and NIL?
Well, it's certainly a lot less than football. Football is just bigger in general. There's just more money in football. And of course, there are a lot more players. So, at the high end, somebody like Hunter Dickens, the real money in NIL is in the transfer portal. The high school kids aren't making as much. Somebody coming into Duke next year, Cooper Flagg, get ready for a lot of Cooper Flagg, man. He's incredible. But of course it's not that they're not frustrated because of NIL and the transfer portal and all that. They're frustrated that there's no one, forget about no one's hands at the wheel. There's no wheel, there's no car, there's no tires, there's no radio, there's nothing. And so we've gone from nothing being allowed to everything being allowed because everybody saw these changes coming over the last 20 years and nobody did a thing to prepare for it. Nobody did a thing. Okay, we're going to do here. So now what we need to do is just completely rip this Band-Aid off and make it professional. Declare them employees, let them unionize, get a collective bargaining agreement. Once you get a CBA in place, you can't get sued. So the NCAA can't even apply the most basic rule. Like the rule was you can't use NIL in recruiting. And so they try to penalize Tennessee for doing that. And now the judge says, oh, you can't do that. So even the obvious rules that everybody knows are unenforceable. So the sooner we get there, the better. And then we can just manage what it is. I see kind of a generational divide in the coaches that I talk to. The older coaches are like, this sucks. It shouldn't be this way. It's not how it used to be. And the younger ones are like, well, how can I function in this new system? Because this is what it is.
Has Danny Hurley become the face of college basketball on the men's side?
The sneering, sarcastic, sardonic face of college basketball. Let me say this about Danny Hurley. I love the guy. So there have been two teams that have repeated as national champs since John Wooden at UCLA. Duke in 1992, Florida in 2007. In both cases, they basically brought back the entire team intact. UConn, from last year's team, they lost 3 starters, all who are playing in the NBA, and they lost 5 of their top 8 scorers because 2 other guys transferred. 5 of their top 8 left that team, and they are the heavy favorite. I would say the heavy favorite, but the clear favorite going into this tournament. So what he's doing, and he took over a program that was in dire straits after the Kevin Ollie disaster. So, whether he's the face of the sport, look, you still have Pitino, you still have Izzo, Bill Self, they're having a rough time with injuries. So whether or not he's the face of the sport, he was my choice clearly for National Coach of the Year because we should not underappreciate what he has done with this team this season.
Great to talk to you. We'll catch up with you when the tournament starts. Thank you, Seth.
Love you, Dan.
Seth Davis, CBS Sports College Basketball studio analyst and reporter. In fact, he helped Rex Chapman write his book.